Hey guys, I want to talk to you about how to develop your CHOP logo. So for this assignment, you are going to be developing your own stamp. And this is how you're going to mark all of your artwork. The most important thing as you kind of go along and read through the instructions is that it needs to be a raised design. Otherwise, you won't be able to stamp it into the clay. So the first part of the assignment is for you to go through and explore different ways of creating line and how you'll design your logo. So at the top part of the worksheet here, you're just going through and you're just practicing around with line weight and different fonts and different embellishments that you can do. So I know it's a little bit of a 2D design component, but I just want you to practice this idea of making really thick lines. I will say a real pencil, a wood pencil, is better for this assignment than a mechanical one. And then you're practicing around with different line weight, making it thick and thin, how it can change. And these next couple of blocks is playing around with different fonts and different styles of letters. So just to get you to practice doing some of these things. At the bottom of the worksheet, I have a bunch of fonts for you to check out, so you can always kind of look at those. But here you're just doing a calligraphy style. Here is a block style. Here is a block with kind of added on items, and then playing around with initials as well, kind of playing around rotating and adding components into what you want your design to be. So this is all just ideation, just trying to decide, okay, what is my logo going to be? So those are the first couple of blocks. The next couple of lines on the worksheet, and if you don't have the worksheet, it's okay, just do it on blank paper. The first line here just asks you to sign the piece of paper. All right, so just how you would sign anything important to check, end of the PSAT, you have to write your signature anyways. So however you would sign something important. Then, so what I did here is that's what my signature looks like, a bunch of loops and swirls. My next step was to really look at it, and I'm using this as an example, kind of going down, is look at it and see what shapes evolve from my signature. So for instance, this one, as I looked, I saw this big loop that I do, this kind of weird thing that I do for my S. So I made that into a circle. And then I was like, okay, I've got this little teardrop shape down here. And then I added that onto the circle. And then I have this big dramatic U shape. And then just kind of the M and a bunch of scribbles, right? So, NS Messmore. So that's the next line. It's kind of identifying those shapes. Everyone's will look different. Then as I came down here, it says, play around with accented lines. So right here, we're making it a design. So it really doesn't look a lot like there, but you can see the influence. And I could continue to play around with it. So that's the first part of the worksheet, is just playing around with line weight, playing around with your signature, seeing if you can develop an idea from there. And I give you a few fonts, but of course, there's like a bajillion fonts out there, so you can keep playing around with those. Your next move is to come over here to the actual coming up with your design sheet. Yes, you will fill out all 10. Okay. So what I encourage people to do is use the original worksheet that you had. How can you build on these? Because this is how you're going to mark all your pottery. So I always use the reference that when I first started making my work, my last name was Rex. Good short last name, right? And when I started making my pottery, I had to come up with a way to sign it versus just taking a needle tool and writing my name in the bottom. So I started playing around with my initials. So if you see that on the bottom of any pots, I made it a really long time ago. All right, so I could always come back in, maybe make this part a little thicker, maybe give it a little bit of a tail. So I can kind of jazz it up a little bit. Maybe even cross it over completely, kind of make it more design focused. So that could have been one of mine. But then, of course, I got married, changed my initials, changed my name. So I could play around with some of the designs that I came up over here. I could play around with that kind of orientation, this kind of oval with the teardrop. But what I ended up doing for my own signature, though, is I played around with my initials. So those are my initials. And I wanted to get them connected because I liked the orientation of this. So I played around with the N kind of connecting in. Erasers. kind of getting that slant. So I wanted those connected. And then I wanted a big dramatic part over the top. So that's my S. Kind of bringing it all together, kind of like that vine wrapping idea. And maybe I come in here and add a little flourish. So maybe that could be a design idea. All right. And then from there, we can let it evolve. So you can keep your paper oriented square. If it helps you come up with ideas, you can rotate it. So it's kind of like a 45-degree. Maybe it's more, and you don't have to fill the entire thing, but your design does need to fit within this block because we don't want them bigger than the block. I would avoid making them way too small also. Inevitably, you know, there's somebody that's like, well, I want to make them really small. This is the actual size we're going to carve. So if you make it really small, that's going to be really hard to carve. All right. So try to fill the block, but just don't go outside of it. Some people, it helps if they're thinking about their composition, what the shape of the outside is going to be. So maybe starting with a circle and orienting your initials like in a circular way might be more fun. So really, I'm asking you just to develop a logo that could be fun that you're going to mark all your pieces with. I would make it fairly easy. I wouldn't make it too complicated because if you happen to forget to do the chop or maybe the clay gets too dry and you can't push your chop into it, you're going to have to carve it. So don't make it too complicated. Otherwise, it'll come back to bite you. So the main thing is once you come up with all 10 designs, we'll pick your best one. Then we're going to make sure that these lines are really thick. So we're going to be using a really soft pencil lead. So this is a 8B, so either a 6B or an 8B. And we're going to make these lines really thick and really bold because that's going to help us transfer this over onto our clay. So as a final product, what we're looking for are raised designs. So we're going to be carving this. So I talked about, don't make it too small. You've got your raised design, so your relief design, and then that negative area carved away. So these are past student examples. Thinking about that raised design, thinking about the continuity. So right now, they might not look like much in here, and that's okay, but this is that artist's signature going forward. So your first goal is to come up with your design idea, and you can have little extra things in the background. Some people come up with some really crazy things. Some people have an extra design, like extra things around the sides. But the first goal is just coming up with a design. And in the next video, I'll talk to you about how to carve it.